Welcome back to the deep dive. And I have to be honest with you, right out of the gate.
Uh-oh.
No, it's just this stack of research, it almost went right back on the shelf.
I can absolutely see why. It is definitely a curveball compared to our usual fare.
A curveball.
Right.
This is a whole different sport. Because let's be real, when I say the word Gnosticism or the Gnostics,
Yeah.
what's the first thing that pops into your head?
Oh, for sure. It's secret societies. It's conspiracy theories.
It's Dan Brown novels. It's the Da Vinci Code. It's dusty scrolls in a jar in the desert, right? People in robes whispering passwords to get into the, I don't know, VIP section of heaven.
That is the default cultural setting.
Yeah.
It's almost impossible to hear the word without that sort of mystical or occult filter just dropping right down over it.
Yeah.
We've been conditioned to see it as this, weird heretical footnote to early Christianity, the stuff of late-night History Channel documentaries.
Exactly. I was fully expecting to spend the next hour talking about which apostle was secretly an alien or something.
Yeah.
But then I started digging into the source material you sent over for this.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically, this work on Nosis as protocognitive architecture.
Mm-hmm.
And I just have to ask, are we sure we're reading the right documents?
Yeah.
Because this doesn't sound like religion at all.
It doesn't.
Now, the language here isn't faith and salvation and sin. It's systems theory, cognitive mapping, structural integrity. The whole central argument seems to be that we've just completely misunderstood what these ancient people were even doing.
And that is the core thesis. It's a bold one, for
It's
sure.
Very bold.
The mission of this deep dive, and the authors, they use that word mission very deliberately, is to completely strip away that mystical, incense-filled framing.
Take the robes off.
We are taking the robes off. The argument is that Gnosticism, at its very root, was never meant to be a secret religion in the way we think of, like, a cult today. It was a proto-cognitive architecture.
Okay, hold on. Protocognitive architecture. You were going to have to sell me on that one.
I know.
Because that sounds like something a Silicon Valley engineer made up to sound smart at a TED Talk. You're telling me that guys living in, caves or mud brick houses 2,000 years ago were writing cognitive science?
I know it sounds anachronistic. It sounds like we're just projecting our modern world back onto them, but just hear me out for a second. Imagine you are a brilliant thinker, okay? It's the year 100 AD.
Okay. Toga and sandals. Got it.
You're obsessed with how the mind works. You want to understand why human beings are so anxious, why we sabotage ourselves, how we perceive reality. But neuroscience doesn't exist.
Right.
Psychology as a field doesn't exist. The scientific method itself hasn't even been properly invented yet. You don't have words like neuron, neurotransmitter, ego, or subconscious.
So you have all the questions, but you don't have the dictionary.
Precisely. You have a massive vocabulary deficit. So what do you use? What's the most high-resolution language available to you?
Myth. Stories.
Myth. Symbol. Metaphor. You talk about gods and demons and spirits, not because you're necessarily trying to start a cult, but because those are the only variables you have to build your equation.
So when they say a demon is attacking me, they might actually be trying to describe like a panic attack or a trauma response.
Exactly. Imagine trying to explain the internet to someone in the Middle Ages. You can't talk about servers and fiber optics and TCP/IP.
No way.
You'd have to talk about a library of light that connects all minds, or a web of spirits. To a modern ear, that just sounds like magic. But for the person describing it, they're trying to map a technical reality.
And the argument is that's what the Gnostics were doing.
That's the argument, that if we look past the mythic surface, we find this incredibly rigorous structural map of how human intelligence actually develops and functions.
Okay, this brings us to a term in the sources that I actually really loved. Systems archaeology. It sounds like Indiana Jones meets a software developer.
It's a great framework, isn't it? I mean, think about the history of science. We know for a fact that alchemy was the precursor to chemistry.
Right. They were trying to turn lead into gold, all that stuff.
They were, but in the process of doing that, they developed distillation, they discovered elements, they invented lab equipment. They were doing real chemical experiments, but they described them in terms of spirits and transmutation and dragons.
Dragon of Mercury or whatever.
Exactly. Eventually, we stripped away all the dragon talk, we kept the chemical reactions, and we got modern chemistry.
And astrology became astronomy. Same thing. They were tracking the actual data of the stars. They just had the wrong theory about why the stars were moving the way they were.
Precisely. So systems archaeology just asks the next logical question. What if we apply that same logic to Nosis? What if Gnosis is to neuroscience and psychology what Valkyrie was to chemistry?
An early functional form of the same science,
Maybe
just
encoded in a different data format.
the sources talk about a lost in translation problem. They say humanity is suffering from a crisis of structural legibility. That hit home for me.
How so?
Because it feels like today we live in these two completely separate worlds. You got the world of meaning, that's religion, spirituality, art, purpose, and then you have the world of mechanism, biology, physics, algorithms, brains. And they seem to hate each other. They don't talk.
They don't talk because we've lost the translation layer. We think they're describing two completely different universes.
Yeah, one is belief, which is fuzzy and subjective, and the other is fact, which is hard and objective.
Right. But the goal of the material we're covering today is to rebuild that translation layer, to show that the ancient myth and the modern mechanism are, in many cases, describing the exact same structural phenomena.
The sources use the word isometric.
Yes, they are isometric. They are the same shape, just seen from a different angle.
Okay, isometric. That's a heavy concept to drop in the first 10 minutes, so we are definitely going to have to unpack that.
We will.
But before we get to the complex geometry of reality, let's start with the words themselves. If we're going to learn this lost language, we need a dictionary.
Absolutely.
So, section 1 of our outline, the vocabulary of the mind. And it starts with the big one, the word gnosis itself.
Right. So let's do a quick gut check. When you hear gnosis, or the related term noesis, what's the emotional vibe you get from that?
Honestly, it feels a little exclusive, a bit arrogant. I have the gnosis and you don't. It feels like a secret handshake for the spiritual elite. It's the red pill.
And that's completely understandable. That is the baggage of 2,000 years of church politics and heresy hunting.
Right.
But if we do our systems archaeology on it, if we go back to Hellenistic philosophy, Plato, Aristotle, the Stoics, these are not religious buzzwords in the way we think of them. They were technical terms. They were the scientific jargon of the day.
Technical terms for what, though?
For the mechanics of the mind. Let's take noesis first. In Greek philosophy, noesis, or the adjective noetic, referred to the act of intellection, thinking, processing, figuring something out.
So like crunching the numbers in your head?
Yes. It's the process. It's the gears turning. Now, compare that to gnosis. Gnosis referred to a state of direct apprehension, integrated cognition, a coherent system state. It's the difference between thinking about something and truly getting it deep in your bone.
Okay, I need a concrete example because direct apprehension still sounds a little abstract to me.
Okay, perfect. Think about learning to ride a bike.
Okay, I'm with you.
When you first get on that bike, you are thinking about everything, constantly. Keep the handlebar straight, push the pedal, now the other pedal, lean left, no, lean right, don't fall. You are processing a ton of data.
You're all in your head.
You are 100% in your head. That is noesis. You are intellectually trying to manage this complex system, and what usually happens...
You fall over a lot. It's clunky, you're wobbling all over the place.
Exactly. Yeah. But then there's that magic moment. Something clicks. You stop thinking, push pedal, lean left, and suddenly you are just... riding.
Yeah.
The bike becomes an extension of your body. You aren't thinking about balance, you are balance. That state of integrated embodied competence.
That's gnosis.
That is gnosis.
Oh, I like that. I really like that. So gnosis isn't about, seeing a vision of God in a burning bush. It's about achieving a flow state.
In a cognitive sense, yes. It is the moment a system moves from high energy conscious processing, which is trying to figure it out, to low energy integrated flow, which is just knowing it.
That makes it sound so much more practical. So it's not, I know the secret password to heaven. It's more like, I have integrated this skill or this piece of knowledge so deeply that it is now part of my operating system.
You've got it. And the source material really emphasizes that the early Jesus communities, and especially the Gnostic groups, they weren't trying to be mystical in some kind of woo-woo sense. They were speaking in the scientific philosophical register of their era. They used words like logos, which means structure or word, nous, mind or intellect, psyche, soul or self, and cosmos, the ordered world.
And today, our register for that would be words like neuroscience, systems theory, predictive processing, and environment.
Correct. So the proposal here is that when we read their ancient texts, we shouldn't be reading them as the Bible, part 2, the heretical remix.
Right.
We should be reading them as like early papers on cognitive psychology. Psyche isn't some ghost in the machine, it's the system of the self. Nous isn't a divine light from the sky, it's the faculty of high-level pattern recognition. They were literally describing the hardware and software of being a human.
It's amazing how just changing that one lens changes the entire text. Suddenly it's not a sermon, it's a user manual.
Exactly.
But
And here is what I get a little skeptical
Right.
again. It's easy to cherry pick words, right? We can say, oh, when they said angel, they really meant neuron. How do we know this isn't just us projecting our own ideas onto them? That's a fair question, a very important one.
to really prove this, the structure has to match. The underlying blueprint has to be the same. And that brings us to the core framework of this whole deep dive. The sources call this recursive structural isomorphism.
Yes, this is the heavy lifting.
And I am going to need you to explain this to me like I am 5 years old.
Yeah.
Because recursive structural isomorphism sounds like something I would definitely fail a college exam on. What does that actually mean?
It sounds incredibly dense, I know, but the concept itself is actually, it's beautiful. Let's just break down the words. Isomorphism comes from Greek.
Isomorph,
Same and morph.
shape.
Right, same shape. And recursive just means it repeats itself at different scales.
Okay, same shape repeating.
Now, the expert analysis in our sources is really, really adamant about this point.
Yeah.
We are not talking about metaphors. We are not saying, oh, the brain is like a computer in some kind of poetic way.
No analogies.
No analogies. We were talking about invariant topology.
Invariant topology. So the shape literally doesn't change no matter what it's made of.
Exactly. Let me give you an example from nature to ground this. Think about a spiral.
Okay, a spiral.
You see a spiral in the water draining out of your bathtub, a little whirlpool.
Right.
You also see a massive spiral in a hurricane on a weather map. And you also see a spiral in the shape of a galaxy.
Right.
Now, a bathtub drain, a tropical storm, and a galaxy are made of completely different things. Water, air, stars, they are on unimaginably different scales. But the math, the underlying topology that governs them, it is identical. The same laws of physics are organizing them into that spiral shape.
So the whirlpool isn't a metaphor for the galaxy. They were literally the same pattern playing out at different sizes.
Precisely. That is recursive structural isomorphism. The idea is that reality is organized as a single recursive architecture that re-expresses itself across all scales. It's that turtles all the way up idea. The patterns that organize a single neuron also organize the whole brain, which also organize the family unit, which also organize a society. Same shape, different scale.
I'm with you on the fractals. Nature clearly loves to repeat a good pattern. But how does this connect Gnosticism and neuroscience?
This is where the idea of the coordinate transform comes in. This was a huge light bulb moment for me when I was reading the notes.
Okay.
We are not comparing two different things, ancient religion and modern science. We're looking at the same machine described in two different coordinate systems.
Give me an example of this coordinate system swap.
Yeah.
How do we actually translate the map from one to the other?
Okay, picture the Rosetta Stone visual that's described in the sources. On the left side, you have the ancient coordinate system. Let's take the term Nous.
Nous, the mind or intellect.
Right. In the ancient texts, Nous is often called the eye of the soul. It's the part of you that sees truth, the part that receives light from the divine realm above.
Okay, so Nous is like a spiritual eye.
Yeah.
Got it.
Now, let's slide that across to the modern coordinate system. What is the structural function of Nous? It's the interface between your internal world and the external reality. It's the part of your brain that is constantly updating your mental map of the world.
Okay.
In modern neuroscience, we have a name for that. We call it the predictive model, or the world simulator.
So Nous equals the predictive model.
Structurally, yes. They occupy the exact same slot in the architecture. They perform the exact same function. So when an ancient text says, purify the Nous so you can see God,
A modern therapist would say.
a modern cognitive behavioral therapist might say, recalibrate your predictive model to reduce cognitive distortion so you can see reality more clearly.
Wow. Okay, that actually tracks perfectly. Purify the Nous sounds all vague and holy. Recalibrate the predictive model sounds clinical and dry. But they're asking you to do the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Clean the lens so you stop seeing things that aren't actually there.
That's the power of the translation layer. It takes the wisdom of the ancients, which was incredibly deep, and it makes it actionable for the modern mind. But it also does the reverse. It takes the cold mechanisms of science and it gives them existential weight.
Right. It tells us that cognitive distortion isn't just a clinical error, it's a spiritual problem.
It's the same shape.
It's like we're finally getting the instruction manual for the human operating system, but we had to decode the language first. So if this is a map of the mind, let's walk through the territory.
Let's do it.
Because the sources lay out this developmental map. And this is where it gets really fascinating for me because it starts to sound a lot like modern child development.
It maps almost perfectly. The Gnostic myth usually starts with something called the pleroma.
The pleroma. Okay, in standard religious studies, this is usually translated as the fullness or the divine realm. It's basically heaven, right? Where everything is perfect and unified.
Right, the place where God and all the little godlets hang out before creation. But structurally, if we apply our isomorphism, what does the pleroma map to?
I don't know. The Big Bang?
Closer to home?
Yeah.
It maps perfectly to the mind of a newborn infant?
The infant mind. Okay, you have to walk me through that. Because babies are cute, but I don't usually think of them as living in this state of divine fullness. They mostly just cry and sleep and poop.
Fair enough. But think about the actual experience of being a newborn. Does a newborn have a sense of, I am here and you are over there?
No, not at all. They don't even know their own hands are part of their body yet.
Exactly. There is no subject-object split. There is no narrative center saying, my name is Steve and I'm a baby. There is just pure presence, pure affect, pure sensation. It is an undivided cognitive field.
Undivided cognitive field. It's an ocean. There are no boundaries.
It is an ocean. Freud actually had a term for this. He called it the oceanic feeling. It's that state of total unity before the world gets chopped up into pieces by language and concepts.
So in the myth, the pleroma is where everything begins.
And in psychology, this state of undifferentiated unity is where every single human consciousness begins.
That makes perfect sense. It's heaven because there's no conflict yet. There's no me versus you. There's just ourness.
Total regulation, baseline coherence.
But we can't stay there. If we stayed in the pleroma, we'd never learn to walk or talk or, pay taxes. We have to grow up.
We have to differentiate. And in the Gnostic myth, this happens through the emergence of the eons.
Okay, eons. In the video games I've played, eons are usually these giant summoned monsters or space gods that you call on to fight for you. What are they here?
In the myth, they're not far off. They're emanations of the divine, pairs of gods and goddesses that represent certain qualities. But structurally, the sources define them as developmental operators or innocent constraints.
Innocent constraints. I love that phrase, but I have absolutely no idea what it means.
Yeah. It means that as the infant mind starts to organize reality, it needs functions to do that. It needs to start recognizing patterns. Oh, that round thing is a face. Oh, that specific sound means food is coming.
It's building categories.
Building categories, understanding relations, feeling meaning. These fundamental functions, pattern recognition, meaning-making, relationality, these are the eons. They are the software modules coming online for the first time.
So when a baby starts to realize that a red ball is different from a blue block, that's an eon firing up.
That is an eon doing its job. It's a constraint. It separates red ball from blue block, but it's innocent. And this is the crucial distinction the sources make.
Okay.
Eons enable differentiation without domination. They allow the baby to tell things apart, but there's no ego yet to say, the red ball is mine.
Mm-hmm.
They emerge before the ego exists. They are the very architecture of becoming.
So it's pure learning, pure growth. It's that amazing phase where kids are just little sponges absorbing the world without judging it yet.
Correct. But then we hit a turning point. The system gets complex enough to do something entirely new. And this brings us to the two most famous eons in the entire Gnostic story, Logos and Sophia.
Logos and Sophia. So Logos usually gets translated as the word, and Sophia means wisdom.
Yes. And structurally, Logos maps to symbolic compression and language acquisition. It's the ability to finally name things, to say mama, ball, me.
And Sophia.
Sophia is relevance, emotional salience. It's the function that asks, okay, but what does this mean to me? It's the feeling of importance, of value.
So Logos gives us the labels for things, and Sophia gives us the feelings about those labels.
Precisely. Now, watch what happens when you combine those two powerful functions. When the system, the child, can name itself, Logos, and can reflect on its own meaning and importance, Sophia, a feedback loop forms.
The system starts looking at itself.
It starts looking at itself. It realizes for the first time, I am a thing. I am a separate entity in the world.
And that's the fall.
That is the structural fall. But, and this is so important, the sources argue that the fall isn't a sin. It is not a moral failure. Eve didn't do something wrong by eating the apple.
It's a developmental milestone.
It's a threshold event. It is the structural moment where symbolic modeling and self-reflection appear. It's the moment you leave the pleroma, that undivided oceanic unity, and become a separate I.
So the fall from grace is literally just becoming a toddler.
In a way, yes, it's the loss of that oceanic unity. You are now a distinct entity. You are alone. And that is, frankly, terrifying.
It is terrifying. I remember watching my own kid go through that phase. There's this sudden separation anxiety. All of a sudden, mommy isn't just part of him anymore. She's over there, and he's over here, and he's small and vulnerable.
That vulnerability creates a crisis. The system needs a manager. It needs something, some kind of central command to protect this new, fragile I.
And this leads us to him.
This leads directly to the most misunderstood and, frankly, the most tragic character in the entire Gnostic cosmology, the Demiurge.
The Demiurge, the big bad, the false god. I've always heard this character described as the villain of the story, the one who traps our pure souls in corrupt matter. He's usually drawn as like a lion-headed serpent or something equally horrific.
That is the mythic description, the monster costume. But let's demythologize it. Let's apply our structural isomorphism. If the pleroma is the vast unconscious field, and Logos and Sophia are the tools that create consciousness, what is the Demiurge?
Well, if the system needs a manager to protect the I, I'm guessing it's the ego.
The Demiurge is the self-model. It is the ego.
The ego is the Demiurge. Okay, let's unpack this. Because calling the ego a false god is a pretty heavy charge. Why false god?
Because the ego is an unauthorized identity. Think about what you are, biologically. You are a vast, complex system of trillions of cells, fluids, neural networks. You are a microbiome. You are a walking ecosystem. But do you feel like a colony of cells?
No, not at all. I feel like me. I feel like there's a little pilot sitting behind my eyes driving this meat suit around.
Yeah. Exactly. That little pilot is a simulation. It is a model generated by your brain to help predict the world and ensure your survival. It's a user interface. It's a dashboard. But, and here's the entire tragedy of the human condition in one sentence, the dashboard thinks it's the car.
The dashboard thinks it is the car. That is actually kind of haunting.
This is what the Gnostics called the blindness of the ego. In the myths, the Demiurge is blind. He's arrogant. He famously declares, "I am God and there is no other." He literally doesn't know about the pleroma that exists above him.
So he's not lying, he's just ignorant.
Structurally, this is the ego believing it is the source of your thoughts, your feelings, your actions. It is completely unaware of the massive unconscious field, the pleroma, that is actually running the show 99% of the time.
Wow.
The ego says, I just had this great idea, but actually the idea just bubbled up from the unconscious and the ego just stamped its name on it at the very last second.
So the Demiurge is basically the ultimate middle manager taking credit for the team's work.
That is a perfect analogy. The Demiurge is the false author. The sources use this incredible analogy of clay to explain how it works. The myth says the Demiurge shapes a body out of clay and then breathes life into it.
Right, the creation of Adam from the dust of the earth.
Structurally, what is the clay? The clay is the fixed identity. Think about how we talk about ourselves. I am a podcaster. I am a father. I am a successful person. I am an anxious person. We create this solid statue of who I am. It's stiff, it's brittle, it's clay.
We freeze ourselves into these statues. I am the kind of person who always, or I'm the kind of person who never.
Exactly. The ego sculpts this stiff, unmoving statue of you, and then it animates it with borrowed breath, with vitality and energy stolen from the living system. We pour all our energy into maintaining this statue.
And defending the statue. Someone insults the statue, we get angry, we feel attacked.
And that is the key insight of this whole section, and it really, really changed how I view this lore. The ego isn't evil. The Demiurge is not a monster who hates you. No. He is a hardworking, slightly blind manager. He is a model that forgot it was a model. This is the structural birth of what we call adulthood. We live inside our simulation, protecting our clay statue, and we completely forget that we are actually the ocean.
This just completely flips the script. Instead of fighting some cosmic demon, we're just recognizing a glitch in our own software. It's almost sad. The Demiurge is trying so hard to keep us safe, but he's doing it by building a prison.
A prison of safety. And he doesn't work alone. He has a staff. He has enforcers. The Gnostics called them the Archons.
The Archons. Okay, this is another term that usually scares people. The Archons are feeding on our negative energy, or whatever the conspiracy theories say.
Right. The loosh feeders.
Yeah, but in this framework, what are they?
If the eons, the good guys, are the architecture of becoming and growth, The archons are the architecture of preservation.
Preservation of the clay statue.
Yes, preservation of the ego model at all costs.
So the archons are the ego's bodyguards, the secret service for the demiurge.
In a sense, yes. The sources define archons as defensive constraints. They are generated by the demiurge. Their entire job is to maintain the self-model's version of reality, even when that reality is painful or false. They are the mechanisms that resist change.
Okay, I need a modern translation. What does an archon look like on a Tuesday afternoon when I'm stuck in traffic?
Great example. You're in traffic, you're late, someone cuts you off, immediately your heart rate spikes, your hands grip the steering wheel, and a voice in your head starts screaming, "He disrespected me! I can't let him get away with that! I am a very important person in a very important hurry!"
Oh yeah, I know that voice intimately.
That entire reaction, the physiological and the narrative, that is an archon. It is a stress loop. It is a threat detection algorithm gone haywire. It is defending the ego statue of, I am an important driver who should not be disrespected.
So the archon is the cortisol spike.
It's the cortisol spike plus the story that justifies it. The sources actually break down specific archons by name. There's Yaldabaoth, the false author, which is that narrative voice. But then there's another one, Sabaoth. In the texts, Sabaoth is often associated with law and order. Structurally, Sabaoth is the moral superego.
The inner critic.
Yes. The part of you that polices your behavior based on social conditioning, the voice that says, don't do that, people will laugh at you. You must achieve X, Y, and Z to be worthy of love. If you don't answer this email right now, you are a complete and total failure.
Oof, I know that archon intimately. That archon wakes me up at 3 in the morning.
We all know him. These are stability engines. They prioritize stability and predictability over truth and growth. They police the system to make sure you don't step out of line because to the ego, stepping out of line feels like death.
So when I feel that tightness in my chest, that fear of looking stupid, that overwhelming need to be right in an argument, that's not me. That's an archon doing its job.
Precisely. The sources lay out this really useful comparison table. The eons are driven by differentiation. They want you to learn, grow, explore. They operate with a growth mindset.
Okay.
The archons are driven by self-preservation. They operate with an anxiety and control mindset.
So when I'm curious and I'm learning a new hobby, simply because it's fun and interesting, I'm in the realm of the eons.
Yes.
But when I start freaking out about whether I'm good enough at the hobby or people on Instagram will judge my pottery, I've shifted into the realm of the archons.
You have absolutely nailed it. And the central conflict, the Gnostic struggle, isn't a war in heaven between angels and demons. It's the tension between growth and safety in your own nervous system. It's the battle between the part of you that wants to expand and the part of you that wants to build walls to protect the statue.
This is so relatable, it actually hurts a little. It
Right.
explains why real change is so difficult. You're not just fighting a bad habit, you're fighting an entire internal architecture of preservation, the archons, that your ego built to feel safe.
And because it feels like a battle, because it feels like there's an enemy, we get to the biggest misunderstanding of them all.
The idea of the devil.
The devil distortion.
Right. Section 6 of the outline. Because the common interpretation is that the demiurge, the god of this world, is Satan. The god of this world is evil and has blinded the minds of unbelievers.
The sources call this a forensic analysis. They argue that this identification of the demiurge with Satan was a semantic coup by later, more dualistic religions.
A semantic coup. I like that. A hostile takeover of language.
It was a brilliant and devastatingly effective hostile takeover. Look at what we just established. The demiurge is a diagnostic concept. It describes a blind processing unit, the ego. It's a structural part of the human mind. It's not bad, it's just limited.
It's a tool.
It's a necessary distortion for human consciousness to even exist. You can't function in the world as a pure ocean of awareness. You need an ego to drive a car and fill out your tax forms.
Right. You definitely can't pay taxes in the pleroma.
Exactly. The demiurge is a tool, but later institutions, what the source calls contemporary dualistic religions, they took this technical diagnostic term and they recoded it. They turned a blind manager into a moral enemy.
They made it binary.
Yeah.
God versus the devil.
Huh.
Good versus evil. Us versus them.
And the consequence of that move is massive. It transformed a tool for critical thinking. Hey, watch out, your ego is blinding you to the bigger picture, into a tool for fear and obedience. The devil is out there and he's trying to get you.
It kills all the nuance. Instead of self-reflection, am I mistaking my map for the territory? It becomes external warfare. I must fight the evil out there.
It replaces critical thinking with scapegoating. The original Gnostic view, according to these sources, was fundamentally non-dual. The Demiurge isn't an enemy to be destroyed. You don't kill your ego.
You recognize it.
You recognize it. You see through it. You realize it's a model and not the real you.
That is such a huge shift. It moves us from a battlefield to, well, to a laboratory.
A laboratory is a great image for it. Which leads us to the final section, the implications. We've built this massive intellectual machine today. We've translated the terms, we've mapped the system, but why? Why does any of this matter to the person listening right now? What do they do with this on a Wednesday morning?
Section 7 calls this the meaning engine. How do we actually apply this framework?
We use it as a truth detection tool. The source makes this incredibly profound point. We don't have to choose between science and meaning anymore. Usually we feel like we do.
Totally. Science gives us hard facts, but it can feel cold and empty. Myth gives us meaning and purpose, but it can feel, well, fake, like a fairy tale.
But if recursive structural isomorphism is true, then they are describing the exact same structural laws.
Right.
Neuroscience is describing the hardware. Gnosticism is describing the user experience of running that hardware. This framework heals the split. It means your spiritual crisis is also a neural reorganization. It means your anxiety is also an archonic defense strategy. You can have the poetry and the mechanism. They're not in conflict.
Okay, so let's make it super practical. Let's go back to that traffic jam. The guy cuts me off. The archon fires. The ego screams about being disrespected. What does Nosis look like in that specific moment?
Gnosis is the moment you step back, even just for a split second. You see the archon firing, you feel the cortisol, you hear the angry story, you see the ego desperately trying to defend its little clay statue, and you realize, that is not me. That is a mechanism running within me.
You disidentify from it, you break the loop.
You return to the Gnos. You recalibrate the predictive model. You realize the guy cutting you off isn't a cosmic attack on your worth as a person. He's just a guy in a hurry who is probably having a bad day. The narrative collapses. The stress fades. That is Nosis. It's not levitating or seeing angels. It's regaining your sanity in traffic.
It validates both languages. You can respect the ancient wisdom and the psychological map it created without having to turn off your modern scientific brain.
And it expands the scale of that validation. The sources touch on this briefly, the cosmic scale. Recursive invariants. If these patterns, regulation, breakdown, reintegration happen in the neuron and in the psyche and in a society, it implies they happen in the cosmos, too.
The Turtles all the way up concept again.
Reality is built from patterns that remember themselves. Whether you look through a microscope at a cell or through a telescope at a galaxy, you are seeing the same fundamental architecture of becoming and stabilizing.
It makes the universe feel coherent, connected. Not in a vague woo-woo way, but in a structural engineering way.
Exactly. It's a single coherent system.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I mean, this has been a lot. We've gone from ancient Greek jargon to infant psychology to the architecture of the cosmos in under an hour.
It is a lot to take in, no question.
But I want to leave the listener with something a bit unsettling. The sources leave us with this final thought about being lost in translation.
Yes, the idea that you are walking around with this entire ancient/modern architecture running inside your head right now. It's not history, it's live code.
And the challenge the source poses is this. Can you see your own ego, not as you, but as the demiurge?
That is the ultimate question, isn't it? If that voice in your head, the one that worries and plans and defends and critiques, if that's just a blind manager, a simulation, then who is listening to this deep dive right now?
Who is the one observing the manager?
Exactly. Can you look at that voice and have some compassion for it without believing everything it says? Can you start to realize that you are not the clay statue, but the breath that's animating it?
That's the practice. That's the real Gnosis. It's not about escaping the world. It's about recognizing the pattern in real time.
Knowledge advances not by discovering brand new facts, but by recognizing the same old patterns wearing different clothes. That's really all we've tried to do today.
Invariant structure. Look for it in your own life. Look for the archons in your email inbox. Look for the demiurge in your mirror. And then ask yourself, who is looking back?
A pleasure, as always.
This has been The Deep Dive. We'll see you in the next layer. Signing off.